Zane, should you introduce this or me?
I'm the pinch hitter here, so.
What is this, the Lucha Zane?
Nuno's name's not in
Luchador.
Zane's name's not real, or Nuno's name's not in the title.
We could call it the Loochador Podcast.
That's true. That's fair. You got
Zane and I
over
here trying to do this and follow the Lions, Bucks coming down to the wire. Of course, the Cowboys, Saints are not coming down to the wire, and we got a big one in Houston tonight. But in the middle of the cover story, we like to take a little break and come over here and do a podcast on Sundays. They're a lot better when Texas A&M goes on the road and wins by 2 scores.
Yep, 13-point win.
And really, that score didn't do it justice. They're a lot better when A&M goes on the road and kicks the ever-living crap out of a conference opponent. And the last time that happened, Zane, was actually the last time that Texas A&M won a road game, right? At Missouri, they pummeled them. That's the last time it's happened. This has been long overdue. What's the song by Three Doors Down?
100 days have made me
1,000 days have made me older since the last time that the Aggies won a game on the road.
It almost worked.
Okay, let me try it again.
It almost worked.
Try it again. 1,000 days have made me older since the last time that the Aggies won a road game.
There you go. Okay. You got it.
It's been a while.
And it actually was 1,000 days.
It's been a while.
It actually was 1,000 days. 1,064 days since October the 16th,
like
2021.
Did you hear my other song, by the way? It's been a while.
It's been a while.
By Stained. We're going straight 90s. That's how long it's felt like since the Aggies got one on the road. But like Mike Ucko said, that we have erased that off the dry erase board, and the number has been moved back to 0.
Yep.
No days since A&M lost a road game. It's 1-0 under Mike Elko, away from Kyle Field, and that's really all that matters. And I think what matters today, and we'll talk a lot about it, but just to put it as simply as I can, Texas A&M, a better football team coming back on that flight than when they left.
Absolutely.
In every, there's some things to nitpick. Starting, number one would be the penalties. But by just about any metric, like what's in here, learning that they can bounce back, knowing they can win on the road, knowing they can overcome adversity with – it's tough when you get midweek injury uncertainty. And in college football, you have to deal with it all the time. But to lose Chappelle, to have uncertainty at quarterback, you lose a reserve safety, a special teams guy in Trey Jones. In game, you lose your starting center in Coley. You've got an hour-long weather delay when you had all the momentum. That was probably a time you would not have wanted that weather delay.
Nope.
And you were playing a desperate football team. And maybe A&M, it wasn't a must-win for the Aggies, but it just felt like one they had to have for this season. So that was a lot to go in and say, let's go to the swamp and win. I mean, yes, we all like to say they should go win that game, and I think they should. And I think as the season plays out, you're going to see this is a really bad Florida team. But it wasn't like A&M was going on the road to play Vandy in a typical – and by the way, SEC Mike, it might be – Vandy might not have beaten A&M when they couldn't even beat Georgia Southern. But – it's not like you're going to play Vandy or this is a program that with a ton of talent. This is not even, say, Mississippi State in a down year, Arkansas and Chad Morris. There's a ton of talent, NFL guys on that Florida team. Year in and year out, even recently, they've produced more NFL guys. Sun Belt Billy Napier came in here and kicked the crap out of A&M a couple years ago with a number one pick at quarterback. Not that he was 1 overall, but Anthony Richardson, right? He wasn't number 1 overall, right? Yeah, but top 5 pick. They come in here and throttled A&M a couple years ago. So to say it was a given that A&M was going to go in, I think it was the opposite. I think the Aggies, it wasn't a trap game because how's an unranked team that's 1-1 and 0-1 against a Power 5 team playing a trap game? It was a game where Texas A&M had to go in there with an SEC opponent with a proud tradition, desperate as hell, and likely to pull out all the stops, and you had to handle business. That place was loud as hell at the beginning. It was very loud. It's one of the tougher places to play in the SEC. It was a traditional 2:30 slot. And anything less than A&M just going out and smacking Florida around early and sending a message, I think would have resulted in that being a really tough football game. But the Aggies went out there and acted like what they did yesterday is what good SEC football teams do. And I'm not saying that, hey, they've arrived by any stretch. They did not beat a team that's going to, I don't believe, finish above 500 yesterday. But they did what a good SEC, a confident, well-coached, physical, good SEC team would do to that football team.
Yep.
They went in there. It was pretty much over by halftime for all intents and purposes. I mean, there's been comebacks bigger. We've been on the receiving end of them. But they had them. They asserted dominance in the first half, and it was 33-7. Game was essentially over. Early fourth quarter?
Yeah, scoreline definitely a little misleading. Reminder, this is the Loochador Podcast, or Luchador, since I'm here. David Nuno's a little bit under the weather. He's Billy Liucci. I'm Richard Zane. I almost called you Billy Napier, but that would have been tough because...
One of the Billies was going to have a rough one yesterday.
One of the Billies is going to be out of a rough one, but I think one of them is going to be looking for a new gig later this week.
I was ready for that. I was like, one of the Billies was going to be really unhappy on Saturday.
Well, this Billy is very, very happy on Sunday.
Thankfully, it was Napier and not Liucci, because if it was me, then it would have been all of us would have. This would not be a very pleasant post-game wrap-up. That's for sure.
This podcast is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Check out Academy Sports and Outdoors for all of your sporting good needs. Also, reminder, fall's here, which means football season, which means tailgating, like the one you're going to host right here at this office on Saturday ahead of the Bowling Green game. So get all your tailgating gear you possibly need over at Academy Sports and Outdoors, and I'm sure they've got everything else you need.
I think there's going to be a lot of us going in there for hunting gear soon, too. As you can tell by my hat, I've got a duck on it.
Saturday was a gator hunt. How's that?
Oh, yeah, they did go gator hunting.
Those boots?
Those were baby gators. Those were not. Those gators were not the variety. The Tim Tebow, Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, Emmitt Smith gators. These are a gator team. Like again, these gators are done. Gators are done. And go in there and put a nail in their coffin. I've seen too many A&M teams, Zane. Like, I've watched, even during this 10-game win streak, how many times did the Aggies take the road in games we quote-unquote thought they were supposed to win? And a lot of those times they should have, but games we thought they were supposed to win during that 10-game winning streak or losing streak. It started with at Ole Miss and at LSU, at an unranked LSU in Ed O's last game. Forget about putting the nail in Napier's coffin. You couldn't even do it when Ed O had already been fired. And he beat. So that's how this thing started. It's included,
what? That LSU game, they got a ton of help.
No, I know, but they also converted 4th and 8. You couldn't convert 2nd and 2. They got one dose of help, and they should have lost the game because of it. But, I mean, you still went out there and didn't play well enough to win in Baton Rouge.
This is fair.
So, look. What other games are in that streak here? So in the 5-7 season, or the 7-5, that ended the 7-5 season. Then you had the 5. You lost to South Carolina in a game we all thought they were supposed to go up there and win. I think you lost at home. That was at home. But there's a lot of games we thought, Richard, that A&M was supposed to win.
Think about it. In 2022, you go to Starkville and you lose 42-24.
Beat down
you lose the number 1 Alabama by one play. Lost to South Carolina. You talked about they were down, 17-0
It's Mississippi State. It's South Carolina. And
Auburn, a really bad Auburn
bad
team.
Auburn team that year.
Who's also had a new coach, right? They had fired their coach. You lost to
God, it was an
Cadillac
interim.
Williams.
You lost to an interim. Yeah, so my point is there were plenty of games where we sat here and thought A&M should go win that game on the road, and they didn't. And we thought they should win Saturday, but I thought it was a little dicier because unlike some of those teams that were just dogs, that Auburn team was full of that was garbage football that they were playing. Mississippi State team wasn't good, and then that South Carolina team actually ended up playing good after that, but you literally gifted them 17 to start that game. Speaking of South Carolina and 17-point leads.
Woof.
The point being, man, this was far from a given. But it was a game A&M would have won if they went out there and played like we believed they're capable of. And key word is believed because we hadn't seen it yet. And again, I don't know what teams A&M's performance on Saturday would have beaten on this schedule. I think several, but it doesn't matter. It was more than enough to pummel Florida yesterday, and it to me is a huge step in the process of becoming a really good football team and becoming a team that can win games away from home starting this year. I've talked a lot about tough tests on the road. Forget about the teams. Just think about the venues. Split, Gainesville, the Swamp. Split stadium in Jerry World, always tough. Cowbells in Starkville. I know what happened to Mississippi State yesterday. And at South Carolina, where you saw LSU get really, really lucky to get out of there yesterday.
And you got to go avenge the last time you went to Jordan-Hare.
In Auburn, which I think they're going to get better and better. And that's probably one of the 4 toughest places to play in this league. And so that away from home schedule is really tough in terms of the venues. But the good news is none of those teams, I don't think any of them will be ranked. South Carolina plays a lot of really good teams before they play A&M. I don't think A&M will play a ranked team away from home. So you had to start somewhere and you had to go show that you can win it. What I wasn't expecting was for them to win it that convincingly. And that's really encouraging moving forward. It really is. And it tells me a lot about this team's focus and physicality, and their desire to get better. Because they've gotten a lot better from game 1 to game 3.
And, I mean, the best place to look at that would be the running game. Right, the running game struggled or didn't really have the night you expected them to against Notre Dame.
Yep.
Granted, they were playing a really good front seven, the Irish, and they bounced back.
A lot better than what you saw yesterday.
Big win against Purdue as well. But they ran for 333 yards on the Florida Gators, this defense that was talking about.
It was 310 to 52 total.
That's crazy.
Rushing.
And it's just, the A&M ran for over 300 yards in back-to-back games for the first time since 2012.
Colin Klein's starting to settle in and implement what he has. And we've talked about these running backs. You look yesterday, and Le'Veon Moss has a career day with 110 yards.
Previous high was 103.
Yep. Amari Daniels, again, like 13 for 68. That's like an Amari Daniels type game. He had some good runs for the Aggies. Those backs were productive. E.J. Smith got, about a half dozen carries.
First down to ice it as well.
Yep, big first down to ice it in his dad's home. I'm looking at catches by the backs. Daniels with a 22-yarder. Tight ends got involved. But that running game, to me, was the second biggest story. The Aggies' run game, the defense produced 3 turnovers, 1 on a Hail Mary, the other 2 huge takeaways in that game, 1 a pick six, 1 to, if there wasn't iced, to officially ice it. And it wasn't because you score there and kick an onside, but to officially ice the game by Javon. But I think the storyline, to me, number 2, is the running game and it's the running game and the offensive line,
Yes.
which a lot of times on Saturday, for a lot of that game, A&M was out there without two starters. I mean, they were Crownover and Deuce played, but Coley got hurt. T.J. Shanahan went in there at center. So for a good chunk of that game, they're playing without – and that's that depth that we talked about throughout the offseason. That's a big part of the reason why I thought this O-line would be improved. But I think what Cushing and Colin Klein have done with this run game and this O-line early on has been really, really impressive. And like you said, it's been that way the last 2 weeks. But that was number two. And the offense in general. I thought the offense, they scored 33. They generated 26, 27 themselves. I think had the weather not been what it was, the way they were running would have really opened stuff up throwing the ball. But the story of the game, besides breaking the road streak, is Marcel Reed and him stepping in and the performance that he had against the Gators, which I think
the offensive line and the running game were so good that it took a ton of pressure off the guy making his first career start. But that 31-yard scramble he had kind of set the tone.
That's what I'm going to say. So here's the deal. And by the way, that was on a missed blocking assignment too. And that was a 3-and-out to start the game, and he reacted to it like he can. It's one of his real strengths, and turned it into a 31-yard gain. And then when Florida scored to cut it to, they cut it to 20-7. Yeah, 20-7, and like, okay, there's
at the half.
There's plenty of time for them to. There's a whole half essentially, and A&M gets the ball, and there's a first down throw to be made there, but Marcel sees it opening up, gives it a couple more steps, boom, hit Cyrus Allen,
immediate
long
answer.
Touchdown answer. Really game over, even though it wasn't. But like I think that was just, I heard Chris Doring talking about it yesterday and how even he was sitting there as a proud Florida Gator going, whenever they did something right, I was expecting something bad to happen. And that just, I think, that literally sent people to the exits in the swamp. That sent people to the exits early, before midway through the third. So, but Marcel playing the way he did, and I think his numbers, what do you have, 83 yards, he had almost 100 yards on the ground. He had 83 and a touchdown, passing 178 and 2 touchdowns. So he had, almost 260 yards of offense.
That's really all you needed from him, because you were able to bully them up front on the 92-yard touchdown drive and then the 99-yard touchdown
drive. Did
A&M
run the football in the last 19 plays of the game or something?
I think so. Well, even on the 99-yard drive, it went 15 plays. They only passed it once.
Well, look, let me talk about Marcel for a second, because I want to go back to those two drives, because damn. 11 for 17 for 178, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. 83 yards rushing in the score. That's his first start of his career. We forget he didn't start the bowl game, right? Yeah. Now you have to go and look, and I don't think this is an interesting conversation we'll have in a minute. That wasn't a great defense yesterday. That wasn't a great defense in that bowl game. But he had 380, 390 yards of offense against Oak State. He has around close, I'm not even doing the math in my head right now, 78 and 381, 261 yards of offense yesterday. In rain, wet field, with an hour weather delay, and a 33-7 lead, a 27-7 lead, 33-7 lead, in which they took the air out of the ball for basically the entirety of the fourth quarter. He would have put up video game numbers had that been some kind of a competitive 4-quarter football game on a good field. He is a playmaker, and he's a playmaker with his legs, and that allows him to become one throwing the football as well, because people have to respect that running ability. I said prior to the game, you're going to deal with some growing pains with a guy devoid of experience and a guy that is it's a two-way street, like willing to do stuff off script, but also doing things off script when he either shouldn't or doesn't have to. So you'll have to, you'll deal with that as it goes. But he has a way of overcoming too. I mean, I guarantee you there's plays where they're going, oh, no, and then boom, and he makes it. And that's what defenses have such a hard time accounting for. But what I liked the most about Marcel yesterday, in his first career start, in his first real action away from, neutral, I mean, in a road environment.
Yes.
And he went out there on that first drive you talked about, and he made clutch throws and clutch scrambles and led him down to a field goal, really threw a touchdown pass on that first drive. And then he came out the next time, went down, touchdown. That was the very next drive, right? Or there was a punt in between?
No.
First two.
I mean, I could look up the drive chart, but...
So, point being, Zane, the way he came out...
They scored a touchdown on their second drive.
Yeah, the way he came out...
The Sweet,
yeah. By the way, congratulations, Theo. Almost had one against Notre Dame. He did have one Saturday, and he's come such a long way as a player, and I think people don't realize how hard his path has been to just kind of figure out this game of American football, realize what a physical mismatch he is, and kind of he's ever evolving, and could still be. I think he and Watson can be real weapons in the passing game. But the story again, I go back. Marcel Reed. What I like the most is the poise and composure. And man, he had an answer every time.
He did.
And when I say growing pains, I'm talking about things within the offense and stuff, and just kind of a play was there to be had and he might miss it. I wasn't even going into a young guy on the road and turnovers. And he didn't do that once. And he was pretty, I thought, pretty masterful yesterday. I don't care what the breakdown of the film would look like when the coaches, I mean, that's for Marcel and Klein and Elko to kind of go through, and I'm sure there are plenty of, I think, but maybe there weren't, but I'm sure there are a few mistakes. I'm just talking about watching the football game, and that was like an A++ performance. Really impressive. And I thought he was a calming influence, calming the storm, so to speak. And I mean the actual storm is in the weather. I mean the being on the road in that hostile environment. I mean the storm of Connor was warming up yesterday. There was a chance that, that Connor would get the start when Marcel woke up that day. I'm sure he felt pretty good about it. As much practice time as he had logged. And I'd said on the boards, and some people couldn't handle it. There's one guy in particular that thought he'd cause a scene because here come the excuses. He had a good week of practice, and it showed on the field. Doesn't always work that way. If you guys would like for me to stop telling you when someone's having a good week of practice because you can't handle it, guess what? I won't. I'm going to keep doing it. Guy who I'm talking to knows you won't win. I will. And I'll be wrong sometimes. Or not wrong, but a guy can have a good week of practice and have a bad game. That was not the case this week. Practice carried over onto the field. But again, Reed, there was a chance that Connor Wigman was going to start that game Saturday, and Marcel was going to have to be just at the ready. Instead, he started, and I thought played his ass off.
You called Marcel Reed the story, and I agree with you. He is the story of this win at Florida. Now is it leading to the debate that everyone wants to have on social media? Is there actually, you tell me, is there a decision to be made moving forward for Mike Elko, Colin Klein, and company, who is your starting signal caller, once Connor Wigman is healthy?
I absolutely think there's a decision, but I think the immediate decision is to gauge Connor's shoulder and see if there's even a decision this week. Because, first of all, have you watched Texas A&M football? Do you watch SEC football? I watched two quarterbacks go down, and I might be, I don't know about the other 13 games. There's A&M. I mean, I know Milroe made it through. But I watched Quinn Ewers go down yesterday, and they're playing UTSA. And I watched Sellers at South Carolina go down. It's why they lost the game. It is a brutal league schedule, and at no position is it more brutal than quarterback. So the way they handle this will be really important, and the way both quarterbacks handle it mentally is going to be really important. But the biggest thing today as we sit here is to make whatever decision you make this week, it has to do first and foremost with Connor's health status.
Yep.
So let's say there's two ways that goes. Either Connor can play, and then we have a discussion about Bowling Green. How much does Connor Wigman benefit from just resting that arm for a week? I don't know much about like that type stuff. I would imagine that if he hurt it against Notre Dame, he only threw about 15 passes against McNeese, took a hard hit on the last snap, but not very many hits in that game, even though he ran around and stuff. And then practiced very little this week, tried to give it a go because he's a tough dude. I don't think anyone that's watched him should question that. But is it in his best interest, both for him himself and for the team, if a week off is going to help him be ready for the rest of the year, then the answer is week off. And you don't worry about, what kind of problem could that create? Or what if Marcel goes out, has another great game? Or
which he should, right? You're playing a MAC team.
You should. At home.
Yes.
But you want to see his growth continue in all those intangible areas too. That's a different challenge. You're at home, you're favored.
Absolutely.
You got to have that same level of focus, so do the guys around you. Ask Penn State about that. They shut him down in the second half, but ask Penn State about that. So I think it's really going to be interesting post-Bowling Green heading into Arkansas. And I think Marcel Reed showed a hell of a lot. The offense certainly seemed to have like a level of life to it, of explosivity that we hadn't seen. But the thing is, Connor Wigman missed 3/4 of last year. So what we're saying is we didn't see it against Notre Dame. That's essentially what everybody's saying. You didn't see it against a really good Notre Dame defense. So, Richard, I think what's good, the Arkansas game is going to be a really interesting inflection point, pending what happens this weekend. I just thought, again, there was a life to that offense, to that passing game. I saw an SEC defense. It's not good on its heels. But if you're Elko, if you're Klein, you're sitting there too, and you're going, okay, Notre Dame was one of the best defenses we'll play. Florida's pretty bad defensively. But damn, Reed was electric.
Yes, he was.
And Connor's banged up. So, like, I think the Arkansas game is going to be heading into their big decision. And it's going to be interesting because do this in your head. If it's Connor in that game and he struggles and you put in Marcel, what does that do
to
Connor? Because, again, I think you're going to need them both the rest of the year. And if Marcel gets a starting nod, how does Connor do as a guy coming into it? Like, I think the thing's going to be really interesting moving forward. I'd be really fascinated to hear what Mike Elko says tomorrow in terms of it. But, man, more than anything, what I want to see first for this football team and for him individually is Connor's shoulder to be right. And if that takes a week off, great. If it takes 2 weeks off, great. I'd love to see both of them ready to roll when they resume and get back into SEC play. That, to me, would be the ultimate goal here.
What's so fun about fun? It can take any form. be a sacred ritual.
Who wants chicken?
Or a random whim. For us, fun is everything. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.
So, Liucci, hypothetically, if Connor's unable to go against Bowling Green, giving it the extra week off to rest that shoulder like you spoke about earlier, and Marcel comes out on Saturday, September 21st, and throws for like 300 yards, accounts for 5 total touchdowns, Ags beat Bowling Green comfortably with him under center.
Yeah.
How much more difficult does that make the decision for you, let alone Mike Elko and the coaching staff?
Yeah, I think that would make it extremely difficult because you'd have been playing 2 teams that aren't very good defensively. But damn, he would have lit 2 teams up. And there is a hot hand argument to be made without question. Without question. I think the easier solution the easier path would be if Connor were healthy this week, you would almost go back to your starting quarterback, and this is what I think, and know that they would both play. And you could almost grade them, and carry this grading curve into another week. But it's not a quarterback controversy because they just won a game. They, had Marcel played great and the Aggie defense played bad and they lost 34-33, I think you'd have a controversy. This is like I think a quarterback decision that they're going to have to make, and I don't think it's an easy one. I know people think it is because of how good Marcel looked yesterday. All he did was make it harder.
Yeah, there's always the argument that the starting quarterback doesn't lose his job to injury.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that per se, but for one game I do. Like if your quarterback's out 4 games and you're just a much better football team with the other guy, and it's more than 4 quarters of evidence of that.
More than one game sample.
It's not like you're going to tell all the guys, hey, I know Zane's a better quarterback than Liucci, but Lucci's shoulder's better, so we're going to put him back in even though we've been playing our best football we've played around here in 3 years.
Y'all heard him say it.
Yeah.
I'm way better quarterback than he is.
Yeah. Problem is you couldn't hold up to the SEC grind, the gauntlet.
And I can in the video game.
Unless you're playing Texas' schedule.
Absolutely not.
Which just keeps getting worse.
Well, even their starting quarterback couldn't hold up to the SEC grind against UTSA.
That wasn't SEC. Quarterbacks get hurt in college football. I'm actually, put me on record as I'm one that's glad that Quinn Ewers' injury wasn't serious. They don't have a quarterback decision because Ewers is so good. They have a quarterback luxury. If A&M will handle this right, and it's a tough one. It's not an easy, like, oh, here's the right way, here's the wrong way. Not yet, anyway. Again, like if Connor was out 4 weeks, if Connor was a 4-week deal and Marcel Reed led you to a 3-0 SEC record, including a win over where he outdueled Cook in Missouri at Kyle Field, obviously,
then that's controversy.
It's not even a controversy. Yeah, it's just an easy decision. You've got one game of each guy, and I hear people going, well, man, the offense looked way different. I agree. And I am so on board with the excitement that I saw yesterday with the X factor that is a guy running around that sometimes has like some Reggie McNeil to him, but with the moves and stuff, look like, Johnny or Lamar Jackson out there juking people out of their shoes. But also, again, it was against just that same defense got devastated and dominated a couple weeks ago by Miami.
Cam Ward.
Yeah, and if he's Cam Ward, I'll take that too. But the other game you're comparing it to was against the Notre Dame team that, even though they lost to Northern Illinois, they've played outside of that one long touchdown catch by the Northern Illinois running back. They have been absolutely dominant defensively through 3 weeks. So, that's what makes, to me, this situation so interesting and tough. But look, all Marcel can do is go out and play like he did. And if he were to go out and do that for another week, the interesting thing that you didn't say is what if Connor starts against Bowling Green and shreds them and looks like the old Connor? So, I mean, I don't think they have a quarterback controversy. The key now is to figure out how to make it a quarterback luxury to where everyone in the program, all the fans, and most importantly, the coaching staff feel like, damn, we got a great situation here now. But it's going to be difficult, I think, to massage that thing if they're both ready to go if Connor's ready to go this week, or if, like you said, if Marcel goes out and just has a monster game, man, it's got to be hard to look away from that. But you also, either way, you've got to be willing as a coach to not do a Billy Napier. Don't force that crap. I thought what a disaster the other day, yesterday, when Mertz goes on a touchdown drive, right, to open the third quarter, and then you bring in Lagway on the next series just because you predetermine he's going to play the second series of each half, and he throws a pick six.
I mean, that dude.
By the way, great play by Will Lee. I called Bryce Anderson. He was my freak of the week. And he made it happen with the pick six.
I bet you would like to see a pick six.
Bet you would, wouldn't you?
Bet you would.
Just like someone like you to do that. Yeah, but or was Bryce my sleeper of the week? Anyway, Bryce Anderson with a huge play, but Will Lee again, another impact play by him. So
we're like 35 minutes into this, and you brought up Billy Napier, the bad talk about, like, first off, punting from your own 37-yard line when you're down 13-0, that's a loser football.
Not your own 37.
He was at his own 37.
I thought it was at the A&M 37.
Oh, yeah, the A&M. So from the A&M 37, yeah. That's loser football.
It is. And look, I get, like, hey, you don't want to go in a normal game. I don't want to go down 20-0. I'm going to punt them down. And look, they got them to the 1 yard line.
Yeah, it's a great kick, but at the same time.
And I'm not going to try to kick a 54-yard field goal on this field right now.
To make a two-possession game a
To
two-possession
make it 13-3. But it was 4th and 11. So there was a lot of, in a normal football game, as much as I hate that, I think you punt on 4th and 11. Now, I think, I don't know what they ran on third down, but I think a forward-thinking coach might run the football on 3rd and 11 and say, hey, we have to go for it here, so let's see how much of this we can get with a run against a pass defense. So I don't remember what he did on third. You're probably looking it up right now, but
on third, it was 3rd and 12, pass 1 yard.
Yeah.
To DK.
Honestly, in that part of the field, I think the great coach can look and go, they're going to be in a nickel, if not a dime defense against us. We're going to run it because we have 2 plays to gain 12 yards, not one. We have 2. So we're going to try to get half of this back and hopefully a little bit more.
But at the same time, so even if it's 4th and 12,
I get it.
Yeah,
I know. So he shouldn't, I would not in that instance, being that you're on the brink of getting fired, being that your fans want more and they're restless and they deserve more, I think because of where you were at as a program, you go for it there. Had that been A&M in that setting, you might punt it. Because your defense, you'd feel like you pinned them down, your defense could get a stop, and you're going to be getting the ball right back in the same spot without risking game over. Yep. Problem for Napier is it was already game over for him. It's game over. If they lose that game, it's almost for sure game over for his tenure. So, yeah, why would you not go down swinging and go down slinging and try to make that a 13-7 game after all that dominance A&M had? If they looked up and were only up 13-7 at the break, that would have been, it would have felt really good if you're on that Florida locker room.
The decision to punt obviously set the stage for one of the most dominant A&M drives we've seen in a long time. 99 yards, 15 plays, 14 of them on the ground, begins and ends with a quarterback sneak, which we know A&M hadn't run the last couple of years. Great to see. But, I mean, how much do you want to talk about those 2 90-yard touchdown drives? considering that we're, 45 minutes into this thing and we haven't even given the A&M
defense.
run defense its flowers yet?
Okay, you have to talk about two 90-plus yard,
Insanely good
two
offense.
90-plus yard touchdown drives in one game. But the 99, and I wonder how many times that's happened in 12 years of SEC play for Texas A&M. Even with Johnny and Mike and all, like, get one of our crack researchers, two 90-plus yard touchdown drives in the same game against an SEC opponent, okay?
It might not have ever happened.
It's be pretty tough.
Oh, in the same game.
You did have Johnny Manziel, so I would, but my point is 99, and if you're looking for like an under-the-radar play of the game, early in that drive, that Le'Veon Moss run, right, that was 3rd and what? At the very beginning of that drive, where Napier's punt was going to work, correct? Napier's punt was going to work. They're on the 1-yard line, and it was 2nd and 9. It's 2nd and 9, and he goes 22. That was a low-key, massive play in that football game for him to keep them out of a 3rd down and then risk having to punt it, take any chances in your own end up 13-0. That 22-yard run to bust it out and get them out of their own end zone, that was a low-key, not that there's a specific play of the game, but I think things like Marcel Reed's scramble on that first drive and Le'Veon on that run right there, those are those little things that you hear coaches talk about that you don't know when that play is going to be, but they change the entire complexion of a football game.
And we hear so much about how chunk plays are just as important on offense as takeaways are on defense. A&M had 15 plays in that game that are classified as big plays. Runs over 15 and passes over 25.
15 of them.
15 big plays.
I knew it would be a good number. I did not know.
No, you asked for crack researchers to find the last time they scored two 90-plus yard touchdown drives. I don't have that. But the 92-yard scoring drive was A&M's longest since 2022. They had a 94-yard drive against South Carolina. The 99-yard drive was the longest. It was the first 99-yard scoring drive for the Aggies since the 2018 Alabama game. That drive went 8 plays and only took 4 minutes and 15 seconds.
2018, so Jimbo's first trip out to Tuscaloosa. That actually might have been when they were down 14-0 and went down and cut it to 14-7 or tied it at 14. They went behind quick in that one and came back. But, yeah, no, I mean, okay, that's an A++ day for the offense, the offensive line, the quarterback, the running backs. You had receivers making plays. They didn't put up big numbers. Again, A&M basically didn't have to throw in the 4th, and it started bucketing down rain the 2nd, right? Cyrus obviously had the play of the game through the air. We mentioned Theo's touchdown. Jabri Barber would have gotten in the end zone. It was nice just to see him back out there. Moose with a big catch early on. That was drive 1, wasn't it, I believe? Yeah. Moose with a huge catch in the early going. And then those were kind of the highlight grabs by that group. But
wearing his sleeves in the rain, mind you.
And it didn't even hurt him. That's a very good point, Richard. But yeah, so offense A+, defense.
Got to give him some. I mean, 52 yards on the ground.
Look, they did what we said they needed to do. They got after the quarterbacks. Maybe a few times they had a little too much time. I'm sure Mike Elko will nitpick.
Especially late in the game
that
with
defensive
the score
line's
out of reach.
performance. I don't think he probably liked the yardage that Florida chewed up through the air. Sometimes I'm looking at games of, 41, 31, and 29, basically 3 plays of 29 yards or more, chunk plays as you called them. So those probably are eating at his craw today, he and Jay Bateman, as they're looking at it. I'm sure they want that defensive front to kick a little more ass than they even did. They did get a couple of sacks. But all told, when that game was in doubt, up until, I say the game – now, those touchdowns were not garbage touchdowns A&M allowed. To get from 7 to 20 by Florida, Florida had the football with about 3.5 minutes left, no timeouts, so they would have had to get an onside, but Javon Thomas gets the pick, but it's not a miraculous situation that it was going to take. It was going to take a quick touchdown drive and an onside kick, and you're in trouble. So it wasn't like they were just garbage touchdowns in a 50-10 game. But that defense essentially iced the game with Bryce Anderson's pick six. And at that point, when it was 33-7, the Texas A&M defense had a push with Florida's offense. That was 7-7. They gave up 7 and produced 7 of their own. So that was, like, scoreboard-wise, that's about as good as you could possibly hope for through 3+ quarters. And then the same thing in terms of run defense. I talked about those 3 long passing plays. They had two rushing plays of over 10 yards for the game. One was so 10. Good. So they had one run went more than 10 yards, and it was 14. It wasn't.
And this is with Mike Elko on Monday calling his run defense terrible.
Terrible, yeah.
They answered the bell.
And I think I think that was a very
awesome.
deliberate challenge through the media, and it worked. They were motivated. I thought they dominated Florida up front.
They also got the challenge from the Gators themselves.
Yeah, that was so stupid of Florida to say. Speaking of, what kind of game let's see if you're going to say stuff like that. What kind of game did Shamar James have? I'm looking. Oh, here he is. 2 unassisted tackles. Nothing behind the line of scrimmage, 1 quarterback carry. Basically, he may as well have not even played.
Jaden Hill had 3 total tackles, 3 solo stops, and Scooby Williams 2 total tackles, including half of a tackle for loss.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about
right
if you're going to run your mouth, what are you going to do to back it up? And it doesn't look like Shamar James did much of anything, nor did their defense. I mean, their defense, you have a linebacker that popped off during the week, and then his football team gave up 300 yards rushing. I've seen that. Unfortunately, I've seen that from A&M teams where guys do more talking than they can back up over the years. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've also seen the opposite, so I know what that looks like. What A&M did Saturday, Richard, was the opposite. They went in there. Florida was a team talking, and A&M let their pads and their play do the talking on Saturday, and then they got to enjoy a victory. I thought it was just a real mentally tough, like, alpha effort by this football team yesterday. And I think Mike Elko had to see that. I think you had to see that on your teammate. I had to see that on my teammate. Talk is one thing. Believing you can do it is another. Going out there and doing it is another. And I know Florida's not good. I get it. I know Napier's fired. I know that schedule's going to catch up to him. I can also tell you Texas A&M has lost more games in that 10-game losing streak. They've lost several to teams worse than this Florida team, and they dominated them. They kicked their ass. They've lost plenty of games to teams worse than this Florida game in the last 2 years when they're 12-14. They kicked their ass. And that's why, like, at the end of the day, a team that's lost more than they've won the last 2 years, I don't think you could just assume that they were going to go out there and play the way they did Saturday. I think we all, but most importantly, the guys in that locker room had to see it and put it into practice. So I think this was a big, more than anything, Zane, this was a culture win for Elko and his program. You don't set the culture in one win over an unranked team, but it is a game that I think you can start to say, look, this is the culture we're trying to build around here. This is the mentality, the mindset, the style of play, all of those things. I think this is a culture win for Elko and his program. First win in the SEC for him. And by the way, the Aggies are 1-0 in SEC play. And they go play it. They're going to be favored in their next one, and and then they're going to draw Missouri at home. And then it's Mississippi State, right? I don't know if you watched Mississippi State yesterday.
I saw the score.
I don't know if you watched Arkansas. They had a fight on their hands, too. Not a good day for the bottom of the SEC. Between Mississippi State and Vandy, and then
Vanderbilt lost on the road at Georgia State, then Mississippi State. Jeez.
41-17 to the Toledo, the Rockets.
It's like, and it looked like Toledo had Big Cat running the offense like he did his Coach Doug's back in the day.
Yeah, so.
Do you like that reference?
No, I don't even know what you're talking about. Was he?
It was like during COVID
when he coached Toledo.
When Big Cat was.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he started out at
Toledo. No, but.
What's this guy's deal?
There.
You didn't even know the references. My references are out of control. He doesn't even get it.
I didn't get your reference there. I'm not a big Coach Doug's guy.
But the best references. Everyone knows
that. My point of saying all that is they're 1-0 in the SEC, and they've got 2 of their next 3 they're going to be favored, and that third one is here at Kyle Field. Just build on this, play better football this weekend against Bowling Green, and you'll be feeling good going up to Dallas and try to get your second conference win. That was all that Saturday was about. It was about averting. I wouldn't have called it disaster. It was not a must-win for Texas A&M football and Mike Elko like it was for Billy Napier. But it felt, I think it's fair to say, it felt way more important than 1/12 of this season. Yep. It felt way more important than one game. So I'm happy to see what they did. Anything else, Zane?
No.
Around the conference?
I was going to ask you the same thing. Did you
around the league?
Else? I mean, around the league, Georgia was lucky to get out of Lexington.
Texas is number 1 today in the AP poll. The Aggies check in at 25. I think 24 in the coaches, right?
Yes.
I don't know if Texas deserves to be number 1. I don't know if it's Georgia. Georgia did not look like it to a Kentucky team that got humiliated by South Carolina. I'm afraid Georgia, and every time you say this, keep in mind, Kentucky's had their number, that Kentucky defense has had Georgia. But without Brock Bowers and without Stetson Bennett, I'm just wondering if Georgia's going to revert back to where they were kind of really opening up that offense. And I know Carson Beck can throw, but I'm just wondering if there's going to be a little flaw there, because if you can't score enough, I don't care how good your defense is, you're going to have a hard time with, let's just look around college football right now. Ole Miss, Texas, I think Oregon will get it together offensively.
Oregon scored 49 points yesterday in a rivalry game.
Tennessee's a great example.
I mean, they could have named their score. They were up 65-0 at the half.
Halftime.
Woof. That's
they did what they did to a MAC team.
That's
unlike
crazy.
Mississippi State. But I just think, Zane, when you look around college football, USC,
Alabama,
and that offense, Bama and Milroe, like if you're gonna, even Georgia is gonna have to have games where they have to outscore people, and that's what Bama kind of started to run into early on in Clemson's thing and Ohio State. But Bama fixed it. Kiffin, Sarkisian, they fixed it, and then they went on to win. I don't know that Georgia's not kind of regressing back. We'll see. Time will tell.
Possible.
If they are, they're going to get exposed in Austin in a few weeks. So I don't know.
Although that would be, I mean, if they are who they are, where their offense is very meh, but the defense is still really good, Georgia good under Kirby Smart.
Then they'll lose to Texas.
It would be a really interesting contrast of styles in this college football landscape where everything's about the offense.
They will lose to Texas in Austin if they're unable to go out there and move the ball and score points. Because against offenses like that, the defense can't, no matter how good, they're just not going to be able to hold up.
Elsewhere around the league, Oklahoma had a fight on its hand with Tulane late.
Let me finish something.
34-19. Yeah, sorry.
Well,
I'm out.
Let me say something real quick. Please. I beg of you.
This is your show.
What'd you say?
This is your show.
Oh, I thought you did a Nuno like, sure. Look, by the way, Nuno, get well soon. We need you. We need you bad over here.
We've got to get Richard Zane out of this chair. He's terrible. He's terrible.
If we look at just Georgia, but I think if I'm ranking top 5 right now, I don't care where you put them. And I'm not going to put Oregon up there yet because the first 2 games, they were not that impressive. But Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Ohio State. I wouldn't care if you put any of them number 1 right now. And I know you can't just zip Tennessee on past everybody. But Texas played the defending national champs. I think Michigan's not good. I think Michigan's 8-4, if not 7-5 this year. But they went on the road and beat the defending national champs, and I think that's better. Correct me if I'm wrong, Richard. That's better than any of the other 4-game teams I've mentioned in terms of what they've accomplished through 3 weeks. So if I'm picking, I'm probably going. If I'm being really realistic of watching what I see, I might go Texas 1. I might go.
This pains me to listen to you say this. But
Texas 1. But it's for now. It's for now.
Agree.
I might go Tennessee 2 out of spite because Ole Miss has played such a shitty schedule. Put Ohio State 3 and Ole Miss 4. No, I'm sorry. Where's Georgia?
Alabama.
Oh, God. I'd probably put Georgia still at 3. I'd put Ohio State 4. Ole Miss 5 because Bama.
You said Tennessee at 2?
Yeah. I'm just saying what I'm watching.
I don't hate it. I think Nico's fantastic. I don't think
any of those teams I've said have played anybody collectively. And I think that if I'm watching those games on a neutral field tomorrow, I think Tennessee beat a lot of these football teams we're talking about. Maybe I'm just drinking the bright orange Kool-Aid, not the burnt orange Kool-Aid.
We'll get to learn a little bit more about Tennessee next weekend.
Too bad we don't get No, that's what I was going to. You mentioned OU, and they barely beat U of H, and they barely beat Tulane, and they're about to play Tennessee at home. They are going to run those fans, whatever stupid nickname they gave to that stadium, the Palace, they just started calling it. So you don't give your stadium a nickname 150 years, 40 years, 30 years, whatever it is and then you nickname it. So they nicknamed it the Palace, I think, here a few years ago.
The Palace on the Prairie.
Yeah. The Palace is going to get ransacked and just like they're going to go in there. Tennessee's going to go in there and it's going to be like Game of Thrones going into that Palace. It's going to be a slaughter. It's going to be the Crimson Wedding. And Tennessee is going to go in there and just absolutely, I'd be shocked. And I will say I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but I think they're going to tear them apart next weekend in Norman.
What else? Anything else?
Is that it for
around
the
the
SEC?
league? Yeah, I think that's the only.
Nationally, what was your big storyline? It was Georgia barely beating Tennessee.
Georgia for
right?
sure.
Kentucky.
And then you know me, my whole thing is how terrible are the Michigan Wolverines? They scored 28 points on Arkansas State.
What was that final?
28-18. Now they didn't almost get McGee'd.
I don't want to set off the lunatics today. I was telling somebody today, like I talked for an hour. They'll take 1 minute, but they are terrible. They can be terrible, and Texas can be deserving of a number 1 or 2 ranking, and Michigan can suck. Like, I saw someone say Texas is like they haven't proven anything yet, and I go, that it could not be more accurate. They've proven nothing. Michigan, we're going to look back on and say they're really, really not good. But just like I said with Tennessee, when you watch the football and you watch what they're doing, you watch and you go, that's a really good football team. That's one of the best teams I've seen in college football through 3 games.
Nothing else really jumps out at me. I know of backyard brawl, West Virginia, Pittsburgh was fun.
Well, did you see who balled out in that game?
Eli Holstein.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Not really too much else going on this week.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good, Zipper. Too bad you brought the Lions a loss. I'll be sure to tell Dan about that.
It wasn't my fault. Dan Campbell, if you're listening to me, I've been a loyal Lions fan. They went 0-16. I was coherent for it.
And he's wearing a Tigers hat.
Wearing a Tigers hat. I mean, I didn't want to sit up here and wear my Barry Sanders jersey.
Would you go eat at Applebee's tonight? Do you care about Dan?
If we had an Applebee's, absolutely.
Oh, we don't?
We don't. The one here closed. I'd be at Applebee's every Sunday if we had one in College Station. Anyways, my whole point is, I've been a loyal Lions fan. They went 0-16. I was coherent for that. First playoff victories in my lifetime this past year.
Didn't get invited.
And here's the whole thing is you bring this guy, this bandwagoner comes along, and then you lose a home game, the bake show.
Time out.
We got Lucci'd.
Time out.
The Lions got Lucci'd.
Let me ask you something. In your, I guess, your lifetime, right?
Yeah.
How many playoff games have the Lions won?
2.
How many of them have I been at?
2.
I'll see you. Luchador
This has been the Luchador Podcast, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Thanks to the sponsors. Thank you to the viewers, and somewhat thanks to Billy Lucci.
Fun, memories, friendship. We're here for all of it. Here for the big moments and the small ones too. We're here for unforgettable triumph, momentary misfortune, and the impromptu throwdown. We're out here each day, chasing something great. Call it adventure, call it play, we call it fun. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.